This is a microphone test. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Quick microphone test. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Microphone test. 1, 2. Check 1, 2. The meeting will begin in 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Mike Thune, and I'm the lead information officer for California Interagency Incident Management Team 2. Some of you also may recognize me as the once former fire information officer from Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. I'm also joined tonight by my partner from California Interagency Incident Management Team 1, lead PIO Kristen Allison. Tonight you will be hearing from a various number of speakers from different agencies and partners on the KMP complex. Information officers are monitoring chat boxes and various platforms on Hello. Information officers are monitoring on chat on various platforms questions as they come through during tonight's presentation. We want to give our appreciation to those that submitted questions in advance, as we've been able to share those questions with our speakers, and we hope that they will answer many of those during their presentation. However, if we don't answer your questions during the live portion of this presentation, our information officers will respond to you in a timely manner, as some of the questions submitted tonight require additional research. The current statistics and information sources for the KMP complex will be scrolling below during this presentation. Our first speaker tonight will be Superintendent Clay Jordan from Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks.
My name again is Clay Jordan. If you're joining us for the first time this evening, I am the superintendent of Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. You know, this is our 7th public meeting now. We've been at this a month, and I am really happy to say that I think we truly have turned the corner on this fire incident. We've had several days of favorable weather. We've got upwards to 2,000 people working on it, aircraft, better flying conditions, and just an enormous amount of progress by a lot of people wearing different uniforms with the federal agencies, with the CAL FIRE, with Tulare County Fire, the Sheriff's Department, Office Emergency Services, so many agencies that have been working together for a positive outcome to this fire. And so I'm feeling guardedly optimistic about where we are this evening. And you're going to hear a bunch of detailed reports. And I think what may be a reflection on the fact that so many of our mandatory evacuation areas are canceled and repopulated. I think folks are turning their attention now from threats to the communities to what have been the impacts of this fire on the park. And so we're beginning, I'm going to try to begin answering that question, although that will be a question that will take weeks and months to really give you a full answer to. It is 90,000 acres. We have been very much focused on stopping the spread of that fire as opposed to trying to assess damage. But I will, there is a lot of interest about it, and I'll hit it a little bit at a couple of high points. For one thing, there's been a lot of interest, again, now that the communities are in a whole lot less of a threat, about just how the giant sequoias have fared to this point. And I will say that, though I'm pretty, I'm feeling pretty good about the future of this fire, and that hopefully it's not going to spread a whole lot. We do need to point out, though, that our containment, we still have a long way to go on this fire. Things can dry out, And so there's a chance that things could always take a turn towards the worse. But at this point, I can tell you, as far as the giant sequoias, the fire has burned into or through about 15 groves in the park. Now, as we've been talking about, fire burning into a sequoia grove in itself is not necessarily a tragic circumstance, as long as the fire is in low intensity. It is those high intensity fires where the flame lengths get up into the crowns of the trees, where they're vulnerable. That's where we get the devastating effects of the fire. So the whole question is not a matter of how many groves have been burned through this fire, but what was the intensity of the fire at the time that they burned through each of these 15 groves. And we don't have a lot of those answers right now, because our attention up to this point has been mostly directed towards trying to protect the other groves that the fires hadn't burned into, and to protect the communities and to protect the historic structures in the parks and in the surrounding areas. But I think what we're going to find when we have a chance to assess everything is we're going to find across the board, we're going to find many groves that come through unscathed with virtually no damage. I think we could also find a grove or two out of those 15 that suffered some substantial damage as measured by sequoias that may have been torched. We know that there were a couple of groves that we were most concerned about. Redwood Mountain Grove in the north end of the fire, up in this area. And then we were also pretty concerned about the East Castle Grove, which is over here. And we were really concerned about these two groves because as the fire approached those areas, it appeared to be at very high intensity. We have now been able to fly this yesterday, and our preliminary estimate are preliminarily. Okay, we had to pause. We're having some connectivity issues this evening, and so you haven't missed anything. But I was starting to talk about Redwood Mountain Grove, and we still need to get in there and get a better look at it, but it is not as bad as we had feared. So I don't know what those numbers are going to look like, the ultimate damage, but we'll be working on it. I know we've gotten some specific questions about specific groves, questions about the Big Trees Trail, for example, at Giant Forest. That was right around the edge of the fire area. I don't have any specific information about how the trees along that trail fared, but I believe I have not heard of much damage in that area. Another question focused on Crescent Meadow area. I think is a similar situation there. That there could be some trees that were lost in that area, but I don't think we're looking at any wide-scale losses in either of those areas. The other questions that I've been getting, again, now that where we can focus, we can start hopefully getting this fire in our rearview mirror, is the future and getting the parks reopened. It is an important part of the economies. We know that there's a lot of businesses that are hurting, and of course, we want to be able to get these parks open. That's a harder question to answer until we get a better feel for it. I will say that My interest is in getting as much of the parks open as quickly as possible, but I do see some real concerns that I think may complicate that. Namely, we know that the fire burned really hot coming up the General's highways all the way up to Giant Forest, and in some of the switchbacks here, there are, as you know, as many of you will know, some really steep slopes. And in some of those areas, those slopes have been stripped of trees and vegetation that really holds the soils in place. So my fear is, as we get into the winter, as we get into that winter precipitation of rain and snow, that we may have some unstable slopes that could cause some landslide issues. The same thing as you come west out of Lodgepole, heading towards Grant Grove. There's also huge numbers of hazard trees along the roads in some of our front country areas, and wintertime can be a tough time to be trying to work on those hazard trees. So I fear that that many areas of the park will take quite a while to open back up. But we are already working on getting those assessment teams in there, trying to figure out how quickly we can get crews in there working on trees and all that. But I've got to remind you that it is still an active fire area, and there is still challenges ahead in managing the fire itself. And then I had a specific question that asked about the backcountry in the eastern section of the park, and why so much of the backcountry is closed to the park for trails that are that access from the east side of the Sierras. It's an excellent question. The reason we had closed so much of this backcountry was, first of all, we didn't know how far east the fire might progress to, and secondly, there was so much smoke production in the mountains in that area. We had to pull our rangers out to focus on the fires and those search and rescue resources, those eyes and ears out there. And so we were not able to provide those emergency services that we normally would, especially with flight limitations, not being able to get helicopters in there, and trying to focus on the fire. I think, though, that the submitter has a valid question whether we can now, at this point, start opening other parts of that backcountry. And I'm going to look at that really closely over the next couple of days, and perhaps we can begin to do that. We did leave the John Muir Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, these through routes through the park open, because we know that really affects people traveling long distances in the backcountry. But we will look to see if we can expand some of those areas that are open in the backcountry. I think those are my questions that I have at this time, and so I will be around, available for any additional questions. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Jordan. I now would like to bring up Forest Supervisor Teresa Benson, Sequoia National Forest, and Giant Sequoia National Monument.
Good evening, Teresa Benson, Forest Supervisor for the Sequoia National Forest. Thank you for joining us this evening. You know, yesterday marks 1 month since this lightning fire began, the KMP complex, and it was the same lightning storm that came through that ignited the Windy Fire to the south of us, which we are continuing to work on containment of that fire as well. And so for now a month, we've been in full suppression mode working on the containment of the KMP complex. And as you have heard since we last had our community meeting with you, we have zoned the fire. We now have a north zone and a south zone, and we have a type 1 team that is assigned to each zone. So to the north, we have California Incident Management Team 2, led up by IC Mike Minton. And then to the south, we have Incident Management Team California Incident Management Team 1 that's led up by IC Jerry McGowan. And so you're going to be seeing the hard work that's been going into this fire for the last 4 weeks. A lot of good containment coming in the future. There's been great work that's been done, and that the 2 teams that we have now have picked up that work, and they're continuing to make really good progress out there, working really, really hard. One thing I wanted to mention about the Forest Service area, that's the green on the map, that's the Hume Lake Ranger District. We've closed the majority of that area to the public, and we're going to be looking at, in the days ahead here, what we can reopen as we get containment on that northern end. And so we'll be actually issuing a new order in several days that will open some new areas. In the meantime, if you have a private residence or private land, you can apply for a permit from the Hume Lake Ranger District. It's an exemption from the forest closure. You can contact the district office and let them know your interests, and then they will process a permit to allow you to go into your cabin or to your property if you need to get in there right away and do some winterization of that. So be sure to contact the district office. I also wanted to let you know that we were doing a check on how much help we've had coming here to the KMP, and we realized that we have had people coming to this fire from 42 different states across the country here to help us. Like Clay mentioned, we currently have over 2,000 folks that are working on the containment of this fire. And so those are our local and county and state and federal resources, but it's also people who are coming here from as far away as Florida, Alaska, Montana, 42 different states. We have gotten a lot of help, and it's very much appreciated. And you might be watching this, and you may have somebody here who's helping us or who has been here. And, you know, we have the firefighters and the first responders and all of those folks on the ground getting the work done. But we also have a proportion of the folks that are helping provide the support to those firefighters. And I just wanted to put out a special thank you to those people who are doing the work to make sure our firefighters stay safe, that they have food, shelter, showers, laundry. Communications is huge to keep our firefighters safe. We also have a lot of people helping with finances and making sure that people and equipment are paid, and that we have the supplies and the materials and the camps that we need. There are a lot of people working really long hours dedicated to getting this fire contained. And we're really excited that people are going to get to go home and enjoy being back at their homes and their own beds. And we're just going to keep working until we get this fire contained. That's our mission as a team. And we're real excited to have our 2 new teams here with us. And so just want to thank all of you for your kind words that you've been sending to the firefighters and support. We pass that along to them, and they know how much you appreciate them. And we're going to stay here and keep supporting them until this fire is contained. So thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Benson. I'd now like to ask to come to the front Operations Section Chief from California Interagency Incident Management Team 1, Chad Cook.
Good evening, everyone. Chad Cook, one of the Operations Section Chiefs with California Incident Management Team 1. Today's our first day on the incident. Yesterday was our in-brief, and we shadowed yesterday. We got some good intelligence on what was taking place on the fire yesterday, and we took command of the fire last night. Today's been our first full working day. I'm going to walk you around the map, tell you what's going on in the south zone of the fire. Our partners on the north are here as well, and also our cooperating agencies, including our local government agencies, CAL FIRE, and our other cooperators that are here to fight this fire, as we mentioned, with everything that's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around this. I've had some questions that have come into me. Those questions, I feel that I'm going to try to talk to some of those questions early so I can answer the questions that have come in. some things I might be coming up later with more specific questions, but I'll talk around the map, tell you what we saw today, where the actions are taking place, and let you know kind of what the strategic priorities are for us operationally on the southern side of the fire. You'll see this big yellow line that goes right through the center of here. This is our zone line that separates, as you mentioned, 2 operational teams that are working out here. Team 2 on the north, Team 1 on the south down here. We're working currently. Okay, we had again some technical difficulties with a little bit of lag in the internet service, so I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about this yellow zone line between both the north and the south. So as I start up here in this Esham Valley area, you'll see that we've gained some black line on the map. This work that was put in the last several days has been validated today. We flew at low level. We looked at all of our technologies using infrared technologies that's out here, along with heat-seeking technology that we have in aircraft and along with people on the ground, and we validated all this line almost all the way down to drop point, what we call 82 and H92, which is I'll call it just kind of northwest of the Fry's Point area here. I anticipate this going black in the next day or two. Again, not a whole lot going on that's out here. You'll see open red line, and that's one of the things that I want to discuss as one of the questions that's come in. And it talks directly about why is there so much open line on this. The idea is to put resources out there and to actually go after it. So again, as you move down all the way down here into the Ash Mountain area, this piece of line that is backing down here into the Shepherd Saddles area has not moved in several days. There is some heat signatures that is deep in here. Today we worked aircraft on this area. We've got crews that hiked up into this section 19 area near H92 on the Sycamore Drive area that picked up some heat that was high on the hill. Again, we continue to work that. And again, when I'm talking picking up heat, this is isolated heat sources, not a steady line of fire that's moving in any direction. This is stuff that we are seeking and destroying based upon our IR flights and where we see heat or the potential for escape. So that continues all the way down into the Ash Mountain area. We do not see any real potential for this to come out of there. Again, it sat there for several days. Now we're just seeking out those heat to make sure that we can blackline this eventually here. As you move down just past this Ash Mountain area, you'll see a lot of black line that's into here. You'll see some red on the interior. Again, some islands and some pockets of heat continue to produce smoke and heat signatures in here. So we're keeping a presence of firefighters to make sure we can deal with that. And that's all the way down, all the way into the Squirrel Creek Grove that's down into here. As you move down to the Mineral King Highway or the road system down here into drop point 30, you're going to see a red bulbous where it came across the road system. This area in here is all offensive and direct tactics that come all the way down into the bottom. Today we inserted crews into the bottom of the river drainage and sought out any isolated heat sources and worked aircraft in this river drainage of the East Fork in this area right down here on the bottom. And again, all of our efforts right now are making sure that this does not come across the river and get established on the other side, and this is where most of our contingent of firefighters is. I want to reemphasize that because that was a question that came across as what is the overall strategy, and I want to make sure you understand that we are offensive in nature on the entire footprint of the fire. It doesn't mean that we don't take some defensive actions based upon things that are going on, but overall strategy is to suppress the fire and to put it out, so I want to make sure I cover that with you. As you move all the way across this Division Charlie, across the highway system, the Mineral King Highway system, out to the Atwell Grove, Silver City area out here, several questions have come in about what is taking place out here. I'm going to focus on this for just a second with you and talk to you that we have about 4 or 5 crews that have started in here off the highway system that are moving up towards Paradise Peak or to our Command 10 repeater location. They are using direct tactics, going right along the fire's edge, but it is slow going. That slow going is basically right through this Atwell Grove of trees, all the way out up into this Paradise Peak. The reason it's slow going is the duff that is on the ground is extremely thick and it is slow going for the crews that are out there. It is low fire intensity, almost like mulch burning that's out there. High heat, low intensity at the base of the trees. So it's just taking time for the crews to move through that. Again, going with direct tactics, using water where they can and continuing that. Once they get off the road system, obviously water will become more scarce and they're going to be using just crew tactics as they can drive it up into the rocks to stop any lateral spread or easter spread of the fire. And that's going to continue. Where the fire slopped over the road system down here, this has been plumbed down into the river and crews continue to do work that's down in here. We've been working with CAL FIRE in this general area and they'll continue to use this line down here and support operations that are in here all the way down into the creek. Again, we feel a high likelihood of success of holding on to this fire where it sits right now and any further easterly spread based upon the tactics that we're employing right now. As you move up around the fire, you'll see this piece that comes out towards this redwood grove. This redwood grove that sits right out here. We've got retardant all around that. We doubled up on the retardant today. We were able to fly several missions in there with clean air. This fire is also parked. It's in an area where it has not seen any heat or any growth in several days. We're going to continue to monitor that, but it does catch everyone's eye because it's a large island of red, and that catches everybody's attention going, where's this fire going? What's happening? Is it moving? The answer is it is not moving. But we're being diligent. You'll see a large presence of us and continue to monitor it through aircraft because of the remote nature of this area, steep, inaccessible terrain to get people in and out of there. So with that, we're monitoring with aircraft, seeing what's actually, if there is any heat signatures or movements. As the next couple days, we're supposed to get some weather systems that'll move in. That'll probably help us out tomorrow afternoon up in here. But right behind that, we'll get drying weather and even winds. And so we're going to be we're just going to be very on our guard for the entire area to make sure we don't have anything that escapes our footprint. That's basically what's going on in the whole south end of the fire. Again, our first day on the fire, a lot of intelligence gathering, a lot of stuff going on out here that is in support of all the operations that's been going on, and we're in close coordination with the North Zone. They're going to come up here and give you a briefing as well. Before I get to that, I wanted to answer one more question that came in, and it's regarding the use of retardant and the water systems that's out here. Retardant is a phosphate-based product. Basically, it's a salt or a fertilizer type. Salt reacts with ammonia. Ammonia reacts with phosphoric acid. It creates basically a byproduct of that is how we get retardant. The salt effects are almost like a fertilizer effect. We try not to use it. We try not to use it within 300 feet of waterways, and we're pretty strict with retardant usages in and around anything that has water. So that's one of the questions, what goes on. We usually do a pretty good job of tracking all our retardant and where it goes. We do try to keep it out of water systems. I'm not saying it can't get in there, but that's what ends up happening with it. So for those that are stressed and worried about the water supply in here, I can assure you we were not using any retardant down here today. We're using water only on this fuel model in here. I'm not sure if it's been used in the past, but in our short tenure here, I know we're not using retardant in that area. We're using it up high, right around this area, right up in here. So again, outside of the 300-foot buffer that we use retardant in from waterways. That was one of the questions that came up. Another question that came up, what's the likelihood of the fire spreading all the way out into Silver City? I will tell you that, again, working with our CAL FIRE partners out here at Silver City, they've done a lot of prep out in the area. They've had a community presence. We feel with the direct actions that are taking place in the Atwell Grove area that it's going to limit any spread that heads out that way. We feel high confidence that we should be able to hold it where it's at. And then a couple other questions that came in too was regarding just the overall, where most of the firefighters are working in the staffing on the southern zone of the fire. I will tell you out this way here, you're in excess of 100 firefighters working in and around the Atwell Grove. You probably have another 50 to 75 that are working at drop point 30 to 21, and another couple hundred that are spread out all the way back up to the zone break. So on this side of the fire, we're somewhere around about 800 firefighters working on the south zone. Those are support staff. Those are staff that work, so we have maps. Those are to make sure people are fed. They're logistical support teams. There's a lot more to it than just the boots on the ground that are using hand tools and water to suppress the fire. It's an overall operation that supports the bigger picture of fire suppression. So I hope I answered your questions. I'm sure more will come in, and I'm going to hand over to our partners on the north.
Thank you very much, Chief Cook. Now to represent the North Zone from California Interagency Incident Management Team 2 from Planning Operations, Jake Ackenberg.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. First, I want to start out and just say there's been a lot of great work done before Team 2 got here, and we were able to pick up a pretty good package going forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start talking around the map, but one thing I want to mention first is a kind of a terminology. You're going to hear the term direct line, and so that is where our fire line is right up next to the fire's edge, meaning that we removed any burning material from the fire's edge so the fire to check it up. So as we come in here, you got the zone break, we come in here and we start working our way north. You see this black line in here? That's been there for 3 or 4 days now, meaning we've got the line in, and we've also had the chance to mop up the fire's edge to really decrease the likelihood of anything coming out of there. So once it turns black here, we're feeling really optimistic. There's minimal chance anything could happen. As you continue north here, coming up, this chunk of line is probably right now as I speak, as people are coming back in and reporting on conditions, it's most likely going to be turning into black line also. Feeling very good about that area there. And then as you continue on up, this is all direct line all the way up to the General's Highway. That is all looking really good. We're continuing to mop up. It's going to be a few more days of mop up in there before, we start looking at that next level of containment. You come up here around the top, General's Highway, up around the nearest point to Wilsonia. That's all direct, and it's all direct all the way back down to the Quail Flat area. We got that in probably 2 days ago, and they're continuing to mop up and patrol in those areas. Feeling good about that. Some areas are going to have dozer line, such as down in here. Some areas are going to be more like hand line up in the steep areas. Most all of it has hose on it so they can get it mopped up and getting things looking good. As you come around here, back to the General's Highway, that's all holding on the General's Highway, mopping up, looking good. Direct line again, so we got direct line coming all the way up and around, all the way down to Montecito Sequoia Lodge. A lot of our efforts over the last 2 days have been on this chunk from right around here, Montecito Sequoia Lodge, back down around here to Stony Creek. We've had 8 hotshot crews working in there, and they're taking the line direct, and they should be connecting everything up to that point early in tomorrow's shift, which is a great news. From Stony Creek up and around, same thing, direct line till it gets back down to the General's Highway, and then it's holding on the General's Highway around here, and then you see that black line from previous efforts. So that's all direct all the way down around into here. It's going to be in the mop up and patrol phase. Working our way around. One area you might see, which people probably have questions about, is this area out here above Lodgepole that's sitting there up above the, up in here. One of the beautiful things about this park is the granite. It's really, if you had the chance to go up to Lodgepole, you'd see that. And so this fire here has not moved in quite a while. And if you look at it from the air, there's a lot of granite features around it. So at this time, we've modeled it, we've run computer models, and we're not expecting any movement out of there. But we'll continue to monitor it. It's definitely, we know it's there, and we'll analyze whether we actually need to put people out there or if it's just rocked itself out or run into the granite. As we come back around here to Lodgepole, coming back around, that's all looking really good. The line coming back around to here, actually that is would have went into all the way out there to DP50. That line would have is the same thing in that same situation. We'll probably go into a black line by the end of shift today. They'll have those conversations once the folks get back in. So that's what we're doing. If you look from here all the way around, a direct line, this stuff is most likely rocked out. We're going to keep monitoring it. Coming around here all the way out to there to DP50. One of the things we're looking at in the future as things move along, and we've looked at, you got this fire edge coming down here, has not moved hardly at all, in the past few days. And everything here down on the middle fork of the Quia hasn't moved in quite a while. And we've modeled some of this stuff, and we aren't expecting at this time much growth coming out of there. But in trying to make sure the fire doesn't impact the giant forest grove, we have some indirect line options that we've taken out here to look at things, just in case we had some options if we needed to, if something did start moving around out here, that we could get in front of it and minimize any impact of that fire coming out. So that's the tight look at what we have going on in the north zone. But one of the most important things, and where a lot of the people have their concerns, is a lot of the stuff we have going on out and around the outside. So over here in Division Union, we got our primary direct line in there, and then you'll notice another contingency line, and we're actually currently working out here at Loggers Point in this area on another contingency line. We do all of that in our planning process, our PACE model. We got our primary plan, and then we got our alternate and a contingency. So we have multiple options in case something does happen. There were some questions about out here in this Pinehurst, Cedarbrook area, and that's what we're doing out there to try and make sure that we can get in front of anything that might happen and protect those values at risk. Up in here, Grant Grove, Wilsonia area, we have a structure group 1. They've been extensively at work out in this area. And now that we're getting more direct on the fire's edge, you might see a little bit less of a presence up here. But when there was more of a threat to the structures, that's when we had those resources out there actively engaged in preparing the properties. Meaning it could be a hose lay around the property, or it could be some line that we cut to give us some options. Maybe setting up sprinklers, something like that. So that whole area up in there had that structure group. Also, that same structure group had responsibility for all these cabins out and around there. When the fire was moving and we were felt like there might be a need, we had resources out there assessing all the structures and doing whatever they needed to make sure if the fire did get there, there'd be a good chance that those structures would survive. As we look around out there, a few questions about, had a question about Cedar Grove. The fire has stopped here up. We have held it right here. Most likely very low, extremely low chance. So that's all looking really good. Another question that came in is when can we get back to Hume Lake? So there is a long process when it comes to talking about repopulation or lifting some evacuation orders. And it's not just one group that makes this decision. Well, it is ultimately, but it comes about through a communication between the incident commanders, the forest supervisor, the local law enforcement, and we all talk about what is the threat to the people out there. At what point do we feel so secure that that it's safe for them to come back in? A lot of times that will go, we'll move to a step where it's just the homeowners who can come back in. And then eventually it will get lifted to an opportunity where anybody can come back in. Up here in Hume Lake right now, we have a large portion of our workforce on the north end. That's a spike camp that we have. There's probably 600-700 people up there. And so that it's a good place for us to be able to access the fire's edge in a quick time. As mentioned, where is everybody working? So majority of our folks are up there at Hume Lake, and then down here at Isham, we also have a spike camp. Our ICP, though, where I'm working out of, is quite a ways out here at Orange Grove. And the idea behind that is for some of the connectivity that the team needs to be able to talk to other people, but we have our workforce up on the hill accomplishing the tasks that they need to get done as soon as they can. So that is all looking really good. I'm very optimistic about what we see the future up here on the north. And one thing to make sure it's not two separate teams. We're two teams, but we're two teams working together at that same mission, working together with the forest supervisor, the local representatives, the park superintendent, and everybody to come up with the best thing we can to minimize the impact of this to the public. And thank you, and thank you for the questions.
Thank you very much, Chief Ackerberg. Next person I'd like to bring up is our tribal liaison, Dirk Charlie.
Good evening, everybody. I'm honored to be here to deliver an update from the tribal liaison perspective. And I just want to thank all of the incident management teams, the federal, state, and local government agencies working smoothly with Indian country. And the tribes that we're dealing with and we're communicating with, those are the tribes located in the Esham Valley area, the Waxahachie-Mitchahai, the Wakchumdi tribe, the Dunlap Band of Mono Indians, Table Mountain Rancheria, Santa Rosa Rancheria, and Tule River Indian Reservation. I'm very grateful to see the smooth working relationships between operations and the resource advisors. This has resulted in good communications and not impacting any of the cultural sites that are very important to the tribes and other important areas such as sacred sites. I want to thank the Sequoia National Forest for being very proactive. Back in September, they knew of some areas that were very important to the local tribes I just mentioned, and they took proactive steps to do fuels reduction in and around that area. And I'm happy to report, based on some sharing of information, that a resource advisor went into the burn, and we found that these sacred sites, they survived in a good way. And yes, those are very important to us, but the tribe's number one importance is the safety and welfare of the firefighters. And I want to thank the smooth cooperation and coordination between all the teams. And again, what we know at this time is that there has been no known impacts to these cultural resource sites, and that I personally scouted out and identified, and I worked together with the tribes and with the operations and resource advisors. So this has been a great relief to me, and I hope that we continue to having such a good result here. And again, we're going to continue to work together in a good way and take care of our lands for everyone. And we really appreciate your continued support and the thoughts and prayers with our firefighters and the staff that are supporting this incident. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charlie. I now would like to bring from Tulare County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant Joe Armstrong.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sergeant Joe Armstrong at the Tulare County Sheriff's Office. Working with the teams, we've been able to put people back in their residences. Just a few little things that we've done. We've lowered the evacuation order for the lower Minnow King area from 198, from Minnow King up to 198 or Sierra Drive up to the park entrance. We're still holding in order the upper Minnow King area, Silver City, Cabin Cove, Sycamore, and up on North Fork. Up on the top piece, we've been able to put people back into Heartland, Isham, and those areas, and up into Wasonia. We've been able to put people back up into that area. We're holding roadblocks at Isham Valley and Whitaker Forest, Isham Valley at Pierce Valley, North Fork at Sheeps Creek, and Minnow King at the Oak Grove Bridge. The question came in as to when we could allow people back in to winterize their cabins. I went up this morning to check on my roadblocks. I was talking to them, and the amount of people the amount of work crews that were coming in and out of that road was amazing. However, it was a single lane road. Everybody that's traveled on Minnow King knows how narrow that road is. So once we get this area down here, once the firefighters get this area down here controlled and safe, we'll allow people back into that area. Be around for questions.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Armstrong. I'd now like to welcome from Tulare County Fire Department, Chief Charlie Norman.
Good evening, everyone. Is it on? Yes, sir. All right. Good evening, everyone. Charlie Norman, Tulare County Fire Department. Glad to be here with you this evening. Been working today on the Windy Fire, helping some people go through some things in our structure losses down there. Just one of those things. It's an 88,000 acre fire similar to this, and we're getting some containment on it. But in addition to the 15,000 annual calls we run every year, just how busy we are in California Fire Service with all the incidents we've had this year. I want to thank everybody. We've been entrenched in this since day one. Chief McLaughlin and myself trying to bring this order to chaos. I don't have a lot of new information on the local government side. Our crews have been doing some excellent work in the Heartland area. They've done a lot of prep work on the Minnow King Road in Silver City and Cabin Cove, and just done some very good yeoman's work. Unfortunately, we've worked with Incident Management Team 2 on several occasions. Unfortunately, I mean based on circumstances, because of the Cedar Fire, the Pier Fire, the SQF, and they've done a tremendous job for us. But I appreciate all the phone calls, texts, messages. Please keep in contact with me. We have our social media outlets. Feel free, and if there's anything we can do, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Norman. Now I'd like to welcome from the Tulare unit of CAL FIRE, Chief Andy Turner.
Good evening. I have a quick update. If you were following along, or if you weren't, we had some fire crews that were working on Thursday, and we had a tree fall, and 4 crew members injured. The makeup of that crew was led by CAL FIRE fire captain and professional paid California Conservation Corps firefighters. They were engaging up in this area, the Atwell area, along the fire's edge direct. The tree came down and injured 4 of them. The initial reports were dire, but the response from the incident personnel and the extrication and transport was extraordinary. It's the fastest that I've seen, much faster than I'd expect based on that remote location. Once they got into the trauma center, it was communicated that they had broken bones, they had lacerations, but nothing close to the heart, nothing that will affect them for life. And they'll be able to return to work. And so that's all good news. We're blessed. So that's an update on that. I did have a conversation with the fire captain this morning. I wanted to express thanks from the department and from the community, because that direct line they were putting in was stopping the spread of that fire towards those cabin communities. And I told him that there's many generations of family memories up there. It's a sacred and special place to a lot of us. The answer from the fire captain was that he was just doing the job he signed up to do. So anyway, we'll wish them a speedy recovery. As far as the new teams that are here, these teams are action oriented. They are objective driven, and they are just flat out aggressive firefighters. It's a sight for sore eyes after this long month that we've been engaged. But I think what that's going to translate to you is you're going to see a lot more containment, and you're going to see that quicker return to normalcy in Kuya country and even in the North Zone. And so we're really appreciative of that as an agency. So and it's so good for us that we're able to disengage a little bit, and we're starting to send some of our resources home because they're from out of the area, and we're able to get our guys some rest. And so we look forward to continue working with them. We're not going to leave completely until the threat to the private lands and the communities is mitigated completely. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Chief Turner. Now I'd like to welcome from California Interagency Incident Management Team 2, representing the North Zone, Incident Commander John Goss.
Okay, evening all. I'm going to talk about something little bit different subject today. I want to talk about building and creating resilient fire communities there, because I think it's an important piece of what's been going on the KNP complex. And I'll make a case for that this work started way before the bolts of lightning that started this complex of fires there. So if you'll bear with me here. So in 1996, I walked in as a third-year fireman there on the Hume Lake Ranger District. And I got a spot on Horseshoe Meadow Hot Shots. Pretty busy fire season in '96, if folks can remember that particular year. Towards the end of the fire season, it was time to stop being a suppression firefighter and roll over to prescribed fire. And so immediately after a pretty long and exhausting summer, the boss said, "Hey, let's go out to Dark Canyon out there in Isham country, and let's start burning piles. Let's start doing some understory." Gave me a drip torch and said, go light that pile. And that was pretty exciting for me, because at the time I wasn't really paying attention to the whole big picture, the whole scheme of things. But it was a drip torch, and I was getting to light things on fire, so it seemed like the right thing to do. So fast forward until basically 2008, spent a little bit of time on Hume Lake Ranger District, and it became very apparent what we were doing. Because every fall, when we used to have fire seasons that ended about mid-October, which does not happen anymore, that the last couple months of fire season, you started doing that prescribed fire work. And what we were doing there way back in '96, and this didn't start in '96, this started way before I got to the Hume Lake Ranger District, was that fuel maintenance work, making those communities fire resilient, whether it was prescribed fire or mechanical treatment. That's what we were doing on the Hume Lake Ranger District. Plenty of communities around the mountaintop there between Pinehurst, Cedarbrook, everything up Dunlap. Plenty of communities to do and plenty of work for us to do. So in 2008, jumped over to the National Park Service at Sequoia Kings National Park. Got a job on Arrowhead Hotshots. And that same philosophy continued. So from 2008 until 2013, spent a bunch of time doing the same thing at Sequoia Kings National Park. You know, all the way from building a fire resilient community around Grant Grove and Wilsonia, which was some really good work, all the way down to Stony Creek, over into Lodgepole, and down into Giant Forest. And then one of the highlights of my career was burning a prescribed fire out in Mineral Creek. It was a mosquito burn. It was about 1,500 acres. And it was very important work, and it really started making sense as my career continued. So I think that's an important lesson for all of us, because it's important for us to capture that there were some successes on this incident, and there were some groves of sequoias and some communities that suffered very little to no damage because of the prescribed fire work that was done before California Team 2 and Team 1 and the Southwest team even got here. So I guess the lesson for tonight is, how can we take some lessons away from this incident, knowing that this is a very large fire, but there were some successes on the Forest Service and with the Park Service and all that fuels treatment that occurred before this became the KMP complex. And why does that matter for as the incident management teams come in? They're this summer especially, as in any summer, there's stuff that you hope to take advantage of when you show up on a park or a unit or a forest there. And with the prescribed fire efforts that were going on in the park and on the Hume Lake District, a lot of the mechanical and veg treatments that were going on, we were able to use those in an effort to put a stop to this incident here, the eventual stop to this incident. And that's important. So going forward, it's grabbing those lessons to see what worked. You know, we've all seen some pretty explosive fire behavior. People keep saying this is the worst fire year ever. We keep saying that. Fuel breaks that worked 10 years ago are not working anymore. There's fuel treatments that used to work that aren't working so good to stop or slow fire spread. So it's just grabbing those lessons that we learned this summer and using them, because unfortunately these seasons, these long fire seasons will continue. So it's just grabbing those lessons as we move forward. A quick question came in about Weston Meadow Cabin there. Yeah, the Weston Meadow cabins are outside the current fire perimeter, so they are still standing and still in place there. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief Goss. We have been getting questions from those online and through other avenues. And so one of the questions we want to answer before we get too far along is I'd like to reintroduce from Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, Superintendent Clay Jordan.
Okay, thanks, Mike. A couple of follow-ups. First of all, earlier I was asked about the status of the Big Trees Trail, and that's a very popular hiking destination within the Giant Forest. And I did not think that it had been affected by the fire, and my staff was able to confirm that the fire came close to the Big Trees Trail but stayed out of there. So at this point, all the trees along that trail are fine. Then we had another question about what do we know about the effect on animals? And that one, of course, can be a tough one to answer because it can really vary from fire to fire tremendously. My experience, though, is that that animals fare better in general with forest fires than what we might think. And there's a couple of reasons specific to that. First of all, when we talk about this area, we're talking about 87,000 acres, right? But like any other forest fire, it is not 87,000 acres of burned forest. What you have is a mosaic. And you'll see when you get a chance to drive back in there and make this drive back up to Giant Forest, you will see sections along the way that it looks like no fire has ever been through there within the perimeter of the fire. You will see some other areas that it looks like a moonscape where it has burned so intensely, and you'll see everything in between where you have some light effects, some of the shrubbery near the ground, but then the trees are fine. So you really find everything in this mosaic in a fire, and that really gives the animals a chance. They're pretty good, especially your larger mammals, of being able to move on the landscape. They can move in these mountains faster than any of us can. And so they will oftentimes, most of the time, get out of the way of the fire, get into these islands of unburned fuels and take refuge there. The other thing with this fire in particular is, even though it's really large, 87,000 acres, it has grown over the last several weeks. We were under, if you recall, so many of the days on this fire have been under that inversion, that smoke layer that really kept the fire conditions low. So a lot of the movement of the fire, a lot of the spread on so many of those days were slow, sometimes a backing fire. So animals had a lot of chance to get out of the way. Of course, that's not going to be the case all the time. Some of your smaller reptiles and mammals can be more susceptible. Some animals can actually burrow enough underground and take refuge as the fire goes by. So it really can vary quite a bit, but they tend to do better than we might otherwise think. All right? And with that, I'll say goodnight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Jordan. I now want to introduce from California Interagency Incident Management Team 1, Incident Commander Jerry McGowan.
Good evening. As stated, my name is Jerry McGowan. I'm the Incident Commander for California Incident Management Team 1, which has the south end of the fire. One thing I'd like to emphasize is both teams and all the cooperators and everybody are all working together as one incident. We're prioritizing everything together and talking to each other daily, and I think that's coming to fruition. Obviously, this was our first day, and there was a lot of information transferred today to myself as well as everybody else that on my team from the north, as well as the cooperators and the team that left. So there was a lot of good work that happened today. There should be a lot of like you say, getting more and more confidence around the perimeter of this fire to where it stays in place. Hopefully this weather cooperates with us. There should be some, what I'm hearing is a little bit of snow on the higher elevations. And with that, I would close, and hopefully that we've answered all your questions for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We want to close tonight's community presentation, letting folks show our appreciation for all the questions that we got tonight. Many of the questions that you submitted during this broadcast were answered by our speakers, but we recognize that some of them may not have. Again, our information officers will work diligently to be able to answer those questions in a timely manner. Please know that some of those questions will require some additional research. These meetings will be posted on the social media platforms, not only after this meeting, but will be available to watch once again if decided to do so. Please look forward to our additional updates that we will provide tomorrow on the status of the KMP complex. We want to thank you again for your time and your support.